we're here because
Senator Pinocchio.
Because America's been duped,
Right.
and I think that's a good way to put it. And we're being walked into a very dangerous situation, and it's becoming very real, I think, for a lot of people. And I'd love to hear your story. I know you've talked a lot about your son Otto and how you woke up to this whole thing, and where do we go from here? That's my question.
Well, like I said in my speech, we need to inform people. That's the only thing that we can do. And the only reason why they've been able to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, except for us, is because people don't know. They don't know the information. They don't know how much the vaccines have increased. They don't know how dangerous they are. and you know, like I was saying, you know, if each one of these people can inform one person or 5 people, you know, every time one person from here, you know, brings another person on board with information, we double and triple and quadruple, and that's all we can do, I really think.
Well, it's like one of the speakers said, we do have the truth on our side, and so you know, the truth will come out eventually.
Right.
And they're relying on people being misinformed, on people being uninformed.
Mm-hmm.
And so our job is to get this information out there. We do, however, have it is an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. We don't have MSNBC, CNN, or any of the big media outlets speaking on our behalf.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're actually ostracizing us and calling us extremists or weirdos, kooky.
When anyone listens to or seeks medical guidance from Jenny McCarthy or any of her fellow neurosurgeons on The View, they've confessed to having the intellectual power of a dead tree stump and may even be living in one. McCarthy's celebrity drivel on vaccination and that of the other healer, Alicia Silverstone, star you will recall of the autobiographical Clueless, amount to offering the world their deep cautions about vaccination and modern medicine.
All kinds of derogatory terms that are meant to alienate us and make us sound like our information is bad, when in fact the people that have spoken at all of these events, they range from doctors to constitutional lawyers, people that are very intelligent, more intelligent than me, very well spoken, and they lay out a very powerful case against the idea of removing informed consent, especially when you're talking about corporations like Monsanto, Merck, Bayer, Johnson & Johnson that have hurt people in the past.
Developing news tonight on a major pharmaceutical settlement. This afternoon, the drug maker Merck agreed to pay a $950 million fine to settle claims that it marketed Vioxx as a treatment for rheumatoid arthritis before receiving FDA approval to do so. The company will also plead guilty to misdemeanor charges. Vioxx was pulled off the market in 2004. Evidence showed that it increased the risk of heart attacks and strokes.
Mm-hmm. Right, and you know what's interesting is, like, we did a press conference before we went in to deliver the signatures, and we did the Today Show and like at least 4 or 5 other shows, and they didn't put any of my interviews into anything. And some of my stuff was used before, and I've noticed they like to pull out that 4 or 5 words that out of context to make us look bad, to make me look bad, and I've really boiled my stuff down to keeping it to a certain point where they couldn't do that, and now they just don't include the interview at all. But yeah, they're in big control of it. If you look at what they're saying on television, in the newspapers, they all hit the same bullet points. It's like they've all gotten this memo of what to say and what to do to make us look bad, and they all do that.
The nasal spray is a safe form of flu vaccine for children. And in fact, this year, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommended this is the preferred form of flu vaccine for children 2 through 8 years of age.
Parents are concerned. They want their kids to be safe and healthy. The science is clear. Study after study has shown that there are no serious long-term adverse consequences from measles. Of course, it can hurt your arm. 1 in 6 kids can have a fever 10 days after, but the vaccine is safe and effective.
How do the risks of a child responding negatively to a vaccination compare with the risks of skipping vaccinations and risking exposure to a deadly disease?
Vaccines are safe and highly effective, and it's important for parents to know they're the best way to protect their kids.
So why do you think there is so much confusion over the vaccines in the first place, and what can we do to alleviate a lot of the public fears?
Well, there has been a lot of confusion, as you mentioned, but the key point I want to make about the vaccine is that it is safe and effective.
Yeah, it's amazing. They've really found the marketing people and inserted them into all of the media, very important media positions. I mean, media, Americans don't understand the media is an extremely important part of our democracy, of our republic. And if people aren't getting good information, how can we make an educated decision?
Right. I think that our founding fathers would roll over in their graves seeing the checks and balances being eroded right now with corporations. And in terms of pharma and vaccines, the U.S. is only one of 2 countries in the world that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise on television and commercially. And what that means is that 40% of advertising dollars are pharma-based. And so basically through this, they have control over what's censored in the media. Mainstream media won't speak out against pharmaceutical companies at all because that's their bread and butter.
It seems like only yesterday. When I started skating at 8 years old, I never thought I'd experience the thrill of winning a medal. With all the great memories has come another thing I thought I'd never experience, the pain of osteoarthritis.
Vioxx is here, a prescription medicine for osteoarthritis pain. With 1 little pill a day, Vioxx can provide powerful 24-hour relief. Vioxx specifically targets only the COX-2 enzyme, a key source of arthritis pain. People with allergic reactions such as asthma to aspirin or other arthritis medicines should not take Vioxx. In rare cases, serious stomach problems such as bleeding can occur without warning.
One less statistic. One less.
Because now there's Gardasil, the only vaccine that may help protect you from the 4 types of human papillomavirus that may cause 70% of cervical cancer.
I want to be one less woman who will battle cervical cancer. One less.
Like all vaccines, Gardasil may not fully protect everyone. The side effects include pain, swelling.
And that checks and balances, when you have that kind of inequity in the system, the checks and balances are eroded. And then at the same time, you have no liability for injuries or deaths resulting from vaccines. And so we really have a completely broken system. And we're going to have to overhaul it from the ground up.
Right. What you're talking about with the liability is the 1986 law that removed liability for all the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to their vaccines, the vaccines after that date. So, and some of those are on the schedule, and I think it's important. People need to realize that there's no incentive for the vaccine industry to put safe vaccines out because they're not liable if anybody's hurt by their vaccine. The people, the taxpayers, end up paying for it.
I think Gardasil is a wonderful example of the mentality of these guys. You know, I think vaccines generally are safety tested for 3 to 5 years. Gardasil, I believe it was 13, 14 months. They asked for the FDA to fast track it, and they did. And then what did the pharmaceutical companies do? As soon as that happened, as soon as it was okayed, they stopped doing the research. You know, because it's not about whether it's effective, it's not about whether it's safe, it's just they're doing the minimum they can do to get it out so they can start selling it and making money, and they don't care about the safety. And Gardasil's been a nightmare if you're following that one.
Abby Swank was a straight-A student and cheerleader. That's her near the center. But that was before she became very ill.
One way. Gardasil.
Following the standard dose of 3 Gardasil vaccinations.
We're like, we're going to go get it because we felt like almost pressured by the commercials.
Gabby got sicker after each shot, progressing to seizures, strokes, and heart problems. It was her neurologist who suspected Gardasil was to blame.
I think that there are too many people having serious long-term side effects.
Last fall, the government concluded there's no link between Gardasil and serious adverse events like Gabby's, but a new analysis calls that finding into question. The National Vaccine Information Center, a private vaccine safety group, compared Gardasil adverse events to another vaccine, one also given to young people but for meningitis. Gardasil had triple the number of ER visits, 5,000. Reports of side effects were up to 30 times higher.
We would never have gotten the shot, and she'd be here to hug.
Emily Tarcell's daughter, Chris, died 3 weeks after her 3rd Gardasil shot, one of 29 fatalities reported in 2 years.
Now we know from this report that there are more reactions and deaths associated with Gardasil than with another vaccine given in the same age group. it's irresponsible not to take action.
Merck, the FDA, and CDC question the value of the new analysis, say they continue to review the data, Gardasil remains safe and effective, and its benefits outweigh the risks. Those who believe the vaccine hurt them aren't convinced. Gabby isn't cheering anymore and is too sick to even attend school.
I struggle with guilt a lot because I made the choice to get the shot for her.
Meantime, Merck has asked the FDA to approve Gardasil for boys who can pass on the cancer-causing virus to girls, meaning the number of people getting Gardasil may double. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
Yeah, actually, Gardasil's the driving force behind most of the mandatory vaccination bills. Merck, who has a monopoly on most of the childhood vaccine schedule, actually priced Gardasil at $135 a dose, and then they have the FDA add 2 booster shots and approve it for boys, recommend it for boys, and recommend it down to age 9, even though HPV is a sexually transmitted disease, and there's over 100 strains of HPV, and Gardasil only targets 4. But with Gardasil being on the market, and it's coming on the recommended childhood schedule as of February 2016, and they make $405 off every child between the ages of 9 and 24, boys and girls, in the U.S. This is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and this is why there was the blank check in SB277, the law that was just the bill that was just made into law in California. Item number 11 in the bill text was a blank check allowing for any addition of future vaccines recommended by the CDC, and that was put in there, and it was not amended because Gardasil is coming on the CDC recommended schedule as of February 2016. $405 per every child in the U.S. 9 to 24. I mean, just think of the money that the pharma companies have riding on this. And Gardasil is one of the most dangerous. It's actually been banned in Japan, and Merck has a ton of lawsuits all around the world due to serious injuries and deaths. And it has one of the highest aluminum contents of all vaccines, and there's 3 doses of it. So Gardasil, in my opinion, that's exactly what's driving the mandatory vaccination bills right there. They price Gardasil higher than all childhood vaccines combined. It's priced more expensive than all childhood vaccines combined. This is their cash cow, and this is where they're going to grow their profits in the future, and this is what they're counting on to, be able to increase their share price.
And Gardasil
are basically the guinea pigs and being sold to the highest bidder.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm not going to be a lab rat for the pharmaceutical industry, and until my son is old enough to make a decision on his own, I'm going to have to protect him from this industry, because clearly they are willing to, put the public at risk in order to further their profits.
In the terms of Gardasil, one of the lead researchers that was working with Merck in the safety studies and efficacy studies has come out against it. Her name is Diane Harper. She would be a good one to research, because she has basically said that there is actually no proof that the Gardasil vaccine even works, and to subject children to such high doses of additives and neurotoxic additives for something that really wasn't even very efficacious, and it wasn't really proven to work in the studies that were done by Merck.
Minimal studies.
Yeah.
How can you say mercury and aluminum doesn't hurt you when you're injecting it right into your blood?
Right. There is no need for aluminum or mercury or even formaldehyde to be injected into our bodies. I mean, it's just not natural, and I cannot believe that we are under pressure right now and under a microscope when we choose to do things more naturally. We are just at the beginning of figuring out the immune system. The University of Virginia just published a study that finally, after decades and decades of research, they have been able to pinpoint the lymphatic system that links the brain to the gut. And any child that has any family of an autistic child would have been able to tell you this years and years and years ago. The heavy metals that go in from the vaccines into the brain are very, very difficult to detox from, and it causes all types of immune issues in the gut, where our main center of immunity. And so this study that came out is supposed to rewrite textbooks, and it's a discovery for the ages, and what it shows is that we are just in our infancy and just in the beginning of actually figuring out our immune system and our bodies. And so we know that there is a risk in vaccines, and yet we're trying, there's a big push to mandate them. We can't mandate something when there's a known risk and when we're in the very beginning of figuring out the immune system and how it works.
And when you're injecting things into your blood, you're also creating the potential for an autoimmune response, because your body sees those as foreign bodies. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, just look around at how many people have hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism in America. It's so common.
We have the new normal in the U.S. We have these diseases that other countries who have much less vaccines on their schedule, childhood doses especially, just don't have. Our new normal in the U.S. is children with autoimmune diseases, neurological disabilities, autism, asthma, childhood leukemia, food allergies, ADHD, tics, speech delays. This is not normal, and yet it's the new normal for our children. It's the first generation of children that's sicker than their parents, and that is the health crisis in the U.S. That is the true health crisis, and that we need to investigate. We need to ask the questions. There are way too many unanswered questions.
There is a health crisis in America, you're right, but it's not measles, mumps, or rubella.
No.
It's cancer, it's obesity, it's type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, it's pediatric cancer. You know what I mean? Those are things that should not be happening, that were not happening a century ago. And we really have degenerated genetically, but it's not because we come from bad genes, or it's because the food we're eating. Like you said, it all goes back to the gut.
Yeah, the food and the chemicals that we allow in our system. Right. It's a chemical cocktail. Our children are exposed to a chemical cocktail unlike anything seen before. And vaccines are a part of it. And vaccines are a huge part of it, and often the trigger, because they're injected straight into the blood. And so they don't go through the body's natural detox processes. They go straight to the brain and all the vital organs through the bloodstream. And that is so, so important. And that is why they often trigger these diseases right after vaccines and the sudden infant death. We have the highest rate of infant mortality in the developed world, and we have the highest vaccine schedule. Mississippi, that has the highest rate of vaccination among children, has the highest infant mortality rate. And California, with passing SB277, has followed suit. That's not something I want to follow suit. I don't want my home state of California to follow these other states and fall into this health crisis that other states are in because of these high vaccination rates. And mandating vaccines, it's such a slippery slope.
Because we as Americans have given our responsibility for our own health care over to the experts, over to the professionals, and well, the people in the white lab coats, you know what I mean? Yeah. They know it, so I don't have to worry about what I eat, right?
What's frustrating, I think, is is in general a sort of anti-science movement, a sort of a disbelief in science and that scientists and doctors do this research for people's benefit. What really frustrates me is these conspiracy theories, because when you think of how much people dedicate their lives to discovering cures, discovering preventions for deadly diseases, and we do it for the best reasons, to save the lives of children.
I want to share with you guys here some good information over on Natural News. And it speaks volumes as to what is really going on here. Now, you have people out there on both sides of the fence. You even have some people out there threatening, insisting that parents who choose not to vaccinate their children should be arrested and charged with child abuse. A concept that infringes not only on natural health and health freedom, but freedoms rooted in the framework of freedom. You see, you have all this anger and debate, but when you get down to it, the guys that are screaming, you need to get this, are not speaking about these facts. Okay? And that is that human tissue is used in 23 vaccines. And one of the biggest concerns brought up here is the human DNA that is being used in vaccines. Also, the studies have been done showing that they've known about this for a long time. When they were giving people these vaccines, these people were contagious. They were actually dangerous to be around other people. And they knew about this. And now they go on to state that what they did is they tried to remove this mercury base from most childhood vaccines except for the flu shot. And they began making vaccines using human tissue to grow the viruses, including measles and chickenpox. Now, the correlation being made here is the spike in autism and other stuff, and they state right around the time when they started doing this in 1995, that's when the spike in autism came through. Right when these vaccine makers began growing the chickenpox vaccine in human fetal tissue.
They're moving towards forced inoculations. Now, if you're a TV viewer, I'm going to go over this for everybody. Merck & Co., White House Station, New Jersey, 08889 USA. This is the paper insert by law out of a measles, mumps, rubella shot that Rob Dew went and asked for at Walgreens and got, okay? The news director got this last week. This is the actual insert right here. If you're a radio listener, Infowars.com/show to find the free feed. Let's just look down here in the right-hand corner where the adverse reactions start and basically then goes through on to the other page, okay? Now, this is where the adverse reactions area begins. The following adverse reactions are listed in decreasing order of severity without regard to casualty within each order of severity in the body system category and have been reported during the clinical trials with use of the marketed vaccine or with use of other vaccines containing measles, mumps, and rubella. Body as a whole, pancreatitis. Oh, that's always nice to have pancreatitis. And then you get diabetes. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Atypical measles, fever, headache, dizziness, malaise, irritability. Now understand, this is where adverse reactions begins in the corner of the front page. You flip it over. Oh, look at the whole back here. Oh, my goodness. An entire back page of what it does to you, including death. Look right here. Death from various, and in some cases, look right here. Digestive system, pancreatitis, diarrhea, vomiting, and it just goes on. Endocrine system, diabetes, see, because it destroys your pancreas. And they say, oh, it's genetic. You know, a week after you get the shot, your kid's gets pancreatitis, their pancreas is gone. Now they're a diabetic. They tell you, oh, it's type 1, it's genetic. No, they just ate your child's pancreas. They fried it. Had an autoimmune response. So does the brain. That's why your kid has a convulsion. They have blood on the brain. Then they do a CAT scan. There's blood. Oh, you beat your child. They're going to take your child. No, they did it. And it gets into all of the different things it can do to your brain. I mean, you really should go read this. There's just hundreds of them. Look at this. Death. Vaccination with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccinations. And then it goes on to break down death there. And there's a lot of other areas. Let's look down here in the corner, though. This is really important. Stevens-Johnson syndrome. I can't even read most of this. Measles-like rash. And then it goes into swelling and the rest of it. It goes into neurological disorders. So there you go. This can cause measles. And you can pull it up, and we've got some of the articles here that we'll get to after the break, where they admit that outbreaks have been from the measles. That's where local news, though, goes and investigates, finds out, and just admits in a footnote, by the way, these were vaccinated people. It's believed that they got measles from it. Just like it's come out that the Disney workers were vaccinated, and then now they're spreading measles. Just like somebody gets the flu shot in your family and suddenly everybody gets really bad flu.
And that's what these vaccines have done. They're miracles. And the fact that a fairly well-educated population would doubt that and question that, that's really what I find frustrating. Right now, we're seeing the highest number of measles cases since the year 1994. And the primary cause is imported cases then spreading to unvaccinated people here in the United States. And the numbers come from about 15 different outbreaks across the United States, and it's among communities where the children are unvaccinated or undervaccinated. The numbers we have now of the cases of measles, the overwhelming percentage are people who have not been vaccinated or unknown. So I believe it's about 69% unvaccinated and 20% more unknown. So it almost accounts for everybody, either being under or unvaccinated. If there are rare cases of people who have been vaccinated, we know that the vaccine is 98 to 99% effective. So it could be the rare few who didn't respond to the vaccine, or either their immunity waned to the vaccine. We need to be very vigilant about keeping our vaccination rates up. There was a lot of misinformation, myths, and frankly lies in the lay media about dangers associated with vaccines that are basically not true. We know that vaccines are extremely safe and extremely effective.
Flu shot, you think, okay, I'm protected.
This year's vaccine, though, is less effective than ever before, and in some of these flu cases, the results have been deadly. Our Crystal Haynes looked into it.
The flu fight is in full swing, and it's a battle many of us are losing this season.
Yesterday, they called me from school that I needed to go get her. She had a fever of 101.5.
Anelli Amaya scheduled her daughter Maggie for a checkup right away.
Whenever I swallow, it hurts.
Anelli tells me she thought for sure it wasn't the flu.
2 years ago, they didn't get it, and they got really, really sick. And then last year, I was like, they're gonna get it.
But now, all 3 of her girls are sick.
They got the vaccine, but they still had the symptoms.
Anelli and her family are among the millions who got this season's flu vaccine, only to find out it was only 23% effective.
I like to call the white coats pharma experts, not medical experts, because most oftentimes all of the studies, especially safety studies for vaccines, they're all funded by pharmaceutical companies. And medical school, I'm not even sure if we can call it medical school anymore. It's like pharma school. It is completely sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. They write the textbooks, they pay the salaries for the professors, they sponsor activities, in fact, in the vaccine class, I've heard from many doctors, the only thing you learn about vaccines is the schedule and how to follow and how to administer them. They don't even learn vaccine ingredients. Those aren't explained. They don't look at vaccine inserts. They don't look at the studies in depth. They're just basically told what pharmaceutical companies want them to say. It's like a pharmaceutical marketing engine. And I truly believe decades ago, doctors and people really wanted to make a difference in the world, and there are still areas like surgeons and things like this, emergency medicine, that is doing so much for our lives. But in terms of vaccines, it is completely run by the pharmaceutical industry now, and it's just, we have to lift this veil. Vaccines have the highest profit margin of any drug that pharmaceutical companies have, a much higher profit margin because A, they have no liability in case of injury or death, and so they're not paying out things in court cases, they're not being sued, complete liability protection, the only product in the US. And then the safety standards for vaccine and the safety testing is substandard compared to normal pharmaceutical drugs. They aren't classified as a pharmaceutical drug, even though they are, but so that they can get onto the market quicker, and so that pharmaceutical companies have less hoops to jump through. And so we have less safety testing, substandard safety testing. We have vaccines that have never been studied in combination. We have doses that are given 6 to 9 average doses of vaccines per doctor visit, things that just don't happen in most developed countries, and we have a very sick population. This is a broken system for so many different reasons.
I don't think I really got educated until the beginning of 2014, and I started to learn more and more and more, and even after I've done so much research and I've found so much, and I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface, and I think this deception has been going on since the beginning. They show that picture of all the iron lungs, that huge warehouse full of iron lungs. Have you heard the history behind that picture? Where they had actually flown in these iron lungs from all over the country to scare people into thinking that the disease was a lot worse than it really was. And so this just goes back so long. And, we were raised to think that these things were fine, and people are clueless. All the things I talked about, they just really don't know. And unfortunately, I think what we need to do is we need to start boiling things down for people, because unless you're really invested, unless you're a former Merck rep, or you got a vaccine-injured child, or unless you're a health nut, you're not going to care enough to do enough research to find out what you need to in order to get a firm grasp of what's really going on. So we need to do what the other side's been doing, and we need to boil it down and as simple as possible, the broadest, most direct points, and get people informed.
They have a lot of studies, independent studies, especially out of the University of British Columbia with Christopher Shaw. There are a lot of aluminum studies in animal studies showing a neurotoxicity and showing death. And really, these studies have been done. It's unethical to do it on a human population, but it's actually being done on our kids. And all we have to look at is the disease incidence and the rates that are really high in the U.S. compared to the developed world. And our children are being these guinea pigs. And we have the science to show what's going on in animals when you inject them with vaccine-relevant doses of aluminum and things like this. We have those studies, but again, they're not being shown in the mainstream media because pharma controls what gets talked about, basically. And people are afraid to speak out. You have doctors that know what's going on, but they're afraid to speak out because they'll lose their license. They will get barred, they'll get discredited. And they probably come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with medical school, and they have to feed their own children too. And then we have even the higher levels of intimidation, and it gets scary, and it is not, there are a lot of shady things that go on behind the scenes, and it's not a safe thing to be speaking out against. So I think we really need to just, as a society, open our eyes and lift the veil and talk about this more and get out there, get flyers into people's hands at farmers markets, the grassroots efforts, and really raise public awareness and education, because it is complicated. There are a lot of different aspects and a lot of different reasons to choose a different way of living and raising your child. And it can get complicated, and a lot of people don't have time to go over it. And we do need to boil it down and just get this information into society's hands and hope that people will start to open their eyes and the tide will turn.
And be patient with people. I've seen a lot of posts where people are saying, if you are on board with SB277, if you don't realize this is horrible, delete me as a friend. And unfortunately, I don't think that's getting us anywhere. We really need, it's not their fault that they've been deceived. I mean, this is the biggest, one of the biggest deceptions ever, in the history of the world. And so it's not their fault, and we need to be patient with these people. And they may be completely against it and angry at us because they think that we're out there, putting people in danger. But you never know when that 1 weak moment might come along where they actually go, they might see something, and that light bulb might actually go off, and they might get clued in. And they are the key. The other ones, the people that don't know, they are the key to winning this battle. And and hopefully we can just start informing people.
You're absolutely right. I have family members that are on the other side of this argument, not vocally, not as passionately. There's very few people I find that are passionately wanting to inject your kid with vaccines. Right. They either work for the pharmaceutical industry or they're Senator Pan or Allen, it seems like.
That's why we saw almost nobody at the Capitol.
Right. And so
they act like they're passionate, but we were outnumbering them at least 15-1. And the ones that were showing up were representing businesses that were standing to financially benefit for the most part.
Right.
And people that are on shaky ground intellectually are not going to be passionate. They don't really have a dog in the fight, they don't think, at least. And I like what you said earlier. You talked about there's kind of people aren't seeing the effects of these vaccines. Maybe it's partially because the reaction doesn't happen right away, and there's kind of a disconnect. And also, researchers, we're talking about an open air experiment and multiple vaccines in a lot of cases. So how can a doctor really associate if the reaction isn't right away? It's very similar to Monsanto and the GMO experiment that's going on in our country. Ever since 1996, we've had GMO crops on the market, and so how can you really say that somebody got cancer from GMO? Maybe it was the GMO, maybe it was the vaccines, maybe it was
a combo of the two.
Right, yeah, maybe it's something else. So, or like you said, a combination of all those together. So it is important, and we should give people a chance, and like you said, plant those seeds, because that's what woke me up. It wasn't that somebody spoke to me and at that very moment the light bulbs all went off. People said things over years. Right. My biology teacher in high school, I can still remember her telling us, read the back of that top ramen label. Have you ever heard of these different chemicals? High fructose corn syrup and dehomogenated, all that stuff. And I didn't know what it was, and at the time I was like, whatever. She's, a hippie, and she's cool, but I didn't really care about it. And later I those things clicked, and now that they're really the building blocks, the cornerstones of what make me a well-rounded and educated person on those kinds of things. Thank you guys for fighting for us, and thank you for coming to our side and bringing your experience and truth with you, and I know God is going to bless you for that. And earlier you said that this isn't a safe thing to fight for. It's not safe to let
Especially
them win.
Not for her.
It's not safe to let them win this fight, and we're with you. And what do they say? Let the heavens fall. You know what I mean? Let them come after us. Let them slander me. Whatever. I don't care, because my very being drives me to fight this, and I feel like crap if I'm not out here, speaking out against it, because I know there's kids being hurt right now as we speak, right? And it's wrong, and we need to put an end to this. And I mean, this is 2015. We should have a choice to have the type of vaccines that we want, safe adjuvants that are natural. If you need to have an adjuvant at all, you know what I mean? And people should have the choice to live a natural lifestyle. I mean, what if you're a Native American individual? Can't we respect those cultures? Exactly. And that's what America's all about. So.
Exactly. We're built on religious freedom, and medical freedom is important as well. I mean, there are so many rights and freedoms being destroyed right now.
Well, happy Independence Day. Tell people how they can find you and support the fight against medical tyranny.
Well, I have founded a nonprofit called the Council for Vaccine Safety, and we're going to be doing a lot of media and public awareness campaigns, public education through commercials and through radio spots and billboards as well, and just really getting out there with the information that needs to get in front of people to really educate people and really get them to open their eyes to what's going on behind the scenes and what really is in vaccines, and just get out there and speak to people, and then also do events like this with grassroots efforts and handing out flyers and just talking and all of that stuff. We just need to really motivate to get out there, and it won't be easy in the beginning. We're in the forefront of this fight right now, in the forefront of the movement, but every effort makes a difference, and that's what we have to get out there, pound the pavement, get things in the on the television. Muscles. Yeah, build up our muscles.
It's like working out.
We need immunity to do this.
Immunity to lies.
Yeah,
That's what we need.
Immunity to lies, exactly.